Welcome to the Reformed Stoic Podcast. Have a seat, grab a drink. Here we discuss politics, religion, current events, philosophy, and everything else that matters. Pull up a chair, get cozy. I'm your host, Reformed Stoic. Let's get started. Greetings, my friends. How are we doing today? Big day for the big man. Let's get cozy. That's right, gang. Yes, sirree. I was a little bit worried when I was getting everything fired up today, but said some prayers, and I'm pretty good at setting things up lately. I think these new settings are the way to go. Definitely try to get your settings figured out early if you're going to be a live streamer, guys. OBS can really be a pain. It just requires a little bit of reading. Yeah. So, we're not covering current events today, boys. I'm going to go over a lot of what I went over yesterday. But we are discovering things yesterday live in an unorganized, frenzied fashion. Today, we're going to be nice, cool, calm, collected, strategic, and we're going to get to the bottom of some of this stuff that I uncovered yesterday. Now, obviously, one of the hottest topics going on right now is the Pfizer stuff. Project Veritas. I'll just say a little bit about that. Project Veritas is a very well-known, borderlining mainstream platform. It's like a controlled opposition. Me and Rick have been talking about how it seems like they're about to start pulling everybody in to the counter movement. And, yeah, they're about to let the world know that Pfizer has ill intentions, and it might seem like something incredible and genuine, but, you know, it kind of seems like maybe they want everybody to know that the pandemic was an attack, so everybody can just kind of like go nuts and maybe try to start some sort of a resistance, and they get absolutely fleeced by the system, and then that's how they usher in the police state. So I wouldn't start celebrating just yet, guys. Anyway, let's go ahead and get things started here. We got a lot to cover today. We're going to be watching longer news segments, older news segments, and we're going to be reading Rainbow. The power of reading, gang. Can you dig it? All right, let's go ahead and do a short prayer. In the name of the... Let's get this hat off. We don't need a hat. All right. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, please guide me today while I am orating what I believe to be extremely relevant truth to our times. Please help me to be mature and focused, and please help my audience to be captivated and to pay close attention, because I believe that the information that we're going over today is absolutely vital to understanding the times we're living in. Thank you, God, for all the blessings you've bestowed on me, and please help to continue guiding us through these dark times. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, let's kick it off. You're listening to the Reformed Stoic News segment. Let's go! Without further ado, let's go ahead and start on fusion centers. Does anybody know what fusion centers are? Well, off the top, I will tell you that fusion in the name comes from the idea that it is a fusion of all government services. They're designed to combine FBI, Department of Homeland Security, local police. All of these government services are fused together so that they can better coordinate. Sounds like something that could be positive, but in a world where government force is corrupt and it's not your friend and it's not working for you, it's something horrifying. Let's dig deep. KXAN, the promise and limits of fusion centers. This is from 3 years ago.
Authorities believing at this point the suspected gunman acted alone and published a manifesto.
I just want to know that she's not in that building and that nobody's taking care of her.
It's horrible.
We have a problem here, but my gosh, the solution is us.
Santa Fe, Sutherland Springs, El Paso, Texas, these things are going to continue to happen if we don't take action. Tragedy met our community here with a senseless act of racial violence here, where 22 people were gunned down and over 20 people were wounded. So I think as someone who represents the community that was attacked, I will be vocal in making my community's voice heard.
Select Committee on Mass Violence Prevention and Community Safety will come to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Darby.
Here.
Navarez. Blanco. Here. Capriglione.
Here.
Guerin.
Here. My commitment to you is that we will listen, we will work, and we will engage in a serious conversation. I want to thank Governor Abbott for his quick and comprehensive response and his executive orders to address some of our system's shortcomings.
We have in place a working model that is good, but we know that we need to both expand and improve upon those efforts.
Governor Greg Abbott issued 8 executive orders to move from reaction to prevention, and he's directed that the Department of Public Safety take specific actions.
The governor has suggested increasing the presence of suspicious activity reporting.
You'll often hear him say, if you see something, say something. I think that's one component of this.
Every person has got to be aware of their surroundings and be able to and willing to report suspicious activity when they see it.
I'm currently the director of the Matrix Fusion Center in El Paso. It's a fusion of many different agencies, local, state, and federal. Analysts, sworn civilian employees who gather intelligence. We have Department of Public Safety, El Paso Sheriff's Department, El Paso Police Department, obviously. The Fusion Center is designed to get all those units, agencies together so they share information. There's only a finite amount of information we can go through with the staff we have, but that's certainly the more people, the more eyes, the more technology, the more programs we have helping us uncover that information, the better opportunity we have to prevent something from happening.
There are a handful of fusion centers in Texas, but not every area has them, correct?
Correct.
We saw the mother of the individual who...
So they just said that, and by the way, I'm sorry that this is kind of quiet. You should be able to hear it if you turn up. I can't control. Sometimes it's very quiet. As you just saw, they failed to counter the latest shooting that happened at the time. So with all this power and with all these great promises, so far they have failed to stop any shootings with it. And they say that, you know, other places don't even have fusion centers, but Texas has 8. And I've heard a lot of bad things about Texas before, I'll tell you what.
Who came here had reported to the police that she didn't believe her son should own this type of weapon. That's a red flag.
Do you think that anything could have been done to stop what he had planned earlier?
If the mother of this individual had reported something to police and there was no action taken as a result of that, or no process in place for police to take action in coordination with state police, we as legislators need to implement those type of requirements so that these tragedies don't happen.
This system has existed for years.
While it exists, it's not being utilized as it should be, and we as policymakers need to implement policies that require this type of communication.
So federal data on mass violence in the past 2 years shows that 84% of attackers had concerning behavior. So the one thing that this center of power, these fusion centers, is claiming to be for, they are failing to do, even though their data. So it's almost like they realize they have all the data that suggests something bad is going to happen, but then they don't act on it. So one has to wonder, what exactly are these fusion centers really for? Well, we're going to be getting into that today.
My son Dylan is a firefighter, and he's been on the El Paso Fire Department for several years. He was one of the first on the scene. He was actually in Walmart when he called me to let me know he was okay. The dead were still in there, and he saw everything. The one person that really understands is his dad. You know, one of the few people that's been through it.
What's it like for you as a wife and a mother to have a family that was touched by mass violence twice?
My son and my husband were both involved in the 2 largest shootings in El Paso. So it's sad that I have 2, members going through that.
Okay, off to a great start. Let's take a look at the comments. Lowest scum on earth. Hey, that looks like somebody I recognize. Ricochet. Strange how these centers never stop anyone before they commit a horrible crime. And then Sukan says, LMAO, are you serious? Name an instance that a terrorist or an extremely violent person was stopped because of a fusion center. Far more than you think. Well, that's just not really an answer, is it? I work at one. Oh, well, they work at one. Gee, do you think maybe they have some sort of a bias going on if they work at a fusion center? Do you really think fusion centers and DHS laud every foiled crime? It's not nearly as sexy as you imagine it to be. Well, I don't imagine it to be sexy, and yeah, you're not really. So the only people who have positive things to say about fusion centers work at fusion centers. Now, in the NKVD in communist Russia, they had what they called the useful idiots of communism. If you read Gulag Archipelago, the book, chapter by chapter, details the entire process of first you get arrested, then you get booked, then you get put in a gulag. It details in very graphic detail every step of the process. And the beginning, where people are being arrested, well, it starts with useful idiots of communism selling people out, ratting people out. And these people who ultimately had low status and low positions of power, they were rewarded with what seemed to them as high levels of power. So what we've seen from evidence of the past is how you create a totalitarian police state is you give these powerful weapons, these powerful positions and seats of power to people with low status and low career positions and low pay. So they say, wow, look at me. I get to wave around all this fancy technology. I get to spy on people. I feel so special. They're being rewarded for oppressing the people. And we will invade everyone's privacy for standing up for yourself and narc out all your friends and neighbors, and we will give you a Walmart card. Oh, interesting. So this person's talking about fusion centers giving people Walmart cards. And if you look into gang stalking, which I'm very hesitant to talk about anymore because my understanding of quote-unquote gang stalking has evolved into something much more sophisticated. But you will hear that people are rewarded with Walmart cards for harassing you. So this seems to imply that fusion centers have something to do with gang stalking. We're going to get into that. I'm telling you right now that fusion centers are gang stalking. And I'm going to unveil the entire process of what gang stalking entails and how it works. They follow me everywhere I go. So this person says that they're being followed everywhere they go by fusion centers. No will ever find out because they made sure of it, not with their secrecy bill. Okay, so they're saying they have a secrecy bill. Defund or you shall see no quarter. We Stasi must take gaslighting action. We'll never find the root cause, but we are the solution. Rat your friends. Dear Eternal One Infinite Creator, this individual claims we are the solution, thus implying that the Antichrist Stasi are the solution to the problems of this world. I feel most high that this is an exaggeration or an outright lie. Through the window of this source's false statement, I pray your divine love to interfere with the plans of the one who lies. Let them know that you are alone, God. Well, I'm pretty sure this person was being sarcastic, but... You see, friends, the idea that someone creates a problem to offer a solution that causes way bigger problems, to offer an evil solution. This is something that I heard a very long time ago in elementary school. It was taught to me that Hitler was involved in creating a problem. Something, I don't remember all the details, but more or less the first time I ever heard this idea of creating a problem and then offering a solution that is totalitarian and inhumane, it was when I was being taught about Hitler as a young child. So, you know, our government created 9/11. This is something that's widely agreed upon. In my film is lit class in high school, we watched Loose Change. If you watch the Michael Moore documentary, Bowling for Columbine, no, not Fahrenheit 9/11. I would love to see Fahrenheit 9/11 at this point. But if you watch Bowling for Columbine, there's a short segment that shows film from 9/11. And Michael Moore says, here are Bin Laden's boys showing off their fancy CIA training. So there's mainstream, well-accepted, and world-renowned documentaries that refer to 9/11 as people utilizing CIA training. So our government created the problem of 9/11. And now they offer the solution of fusion centers, which we've been able to see for years and years and years now, is totalitarian terror. Let's continue. Fusion centers formed following 9/11. Watches over Las Vegas. This is 1 year ago, Fox 5, Las Vegas. Hopefully this is louder.
Where the female is aggressively encountering all the different tourists walking on the bridge.
A woman waving a butcher knife on a pedestrian bridge over the Strip. Cameras following her every move. The people operating them letting officers know before they even arrive she has thrown the knife over the barrier and onto the street below so they can safely take her into custody. These cameras are being monitored from inside of Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department headquarters in the Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center.
We are trying to make sure that something like 9/11, something like 1 October, something like domestic extremist attacks that you've seen all across the country don't happen in our community.
But yet, so far, they have failed every single time to stop any of these attacks.
The center is not just staffed by LVMPD. There are representatives from 18 agencies, local, state, and federal, including Henderson PD, North Las Vegas PD, CCSD Police, DPS, Homeland Security, and TSA, all under one roof. This coming together or fusing of law enforcement, the result of changes after 9/11. Carrie Underwood, director of the Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center, has been part of this fusion center since it opened in 2007 and has seen it evolve.
We were able to really find exactly how these agencies can work together and really contribute their skills and their information to the overall effort.
Specialists and officers in the Fusion Center's Fusion Watch work 24/7 protecting the city, watching for crimes in real time on an extensive network of cameras.
Over 600 cameras, so we're constantly scanning. The people that are working in here are actually...
Now, if you've read 1984, this basically is Big Brother. Watching the entire city on cameras, making sure everybody's being a good boy. This is a complete invasion of privacy. This is the manifestation of the police surveillance state. And what we're going to find out as time goes on during this podcast, it might be a extra long podcast today, is that there is a shadow CIA in which private companies filled to the brim with former CIA agents are connected to these fusion centers, and they hold absolutely no accountability to the government. There are certain checks and balances that supposedly are held against the CIA. I mean, ultimately, the history of the CIA shows that they're not really accountable. But these shadow CIA agencies, which I'm going to prove have connection to these fusion centers, they have absolutely no accountability of any sort. They are not seen as a CIA. They are seen as private contracted security entities.
Trained to look for those behavioral indicators and those anomalies. Our people were panning and saw an individual sitting near the Bellagio fountains a little abnormal. He immediately went to his bag and started pulling out a firearm.
The man concealed the gun in his waistband, got up, and walked to other individuals, dropping a magazine from the gun along the way. One call from the Fusion Center, and officers on the strip are there in seconds. Though they don't know exactly what was planned, preventing violence before it happens is the goal.
So a lot of people wonder how gang stalkers can always know where they are. It seems very mystical and mysterious how people can kind of just pop out of nowhere. You're being watched on cameras. These fusion centers are watching you on cameras. Now, fusion centers don't have a presence everywhere. They have alternative methods. These people have access to top-level black hat hacking. You know, I believe that they've hacked my security cameras, and that's how they know when I leave my house. But you're probably starting to see how this kind of technology can be put to use with so-called gang stalking. And what victims, the people who refer to themselves as TIs, what they have noticed is that gang stalkers seem to manifest in all sorts of government services. It could be volunteer fire department. It could be local police. It could even be people who are employed at hospitals, private security, hence the Fusion Center, where all of these services are combined and can be summoned at an instant and can show up at your location, as they just said, within minutes.
Call from the Fusion Center, and officers on the strip are there in seconds, though they don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. Seconds, not minutes. Right. I'm sorry. I said that they show up in minutes. Actually, according to the source that we're watching on a mainstream news outlet, they say they can show up in seconds. So I'm sorry that I made that mistake. It's actually worse than I thought.
Exactly what was planned, preventing violence before it happens is the goal.
And we honestly don't have that luxury to sit there and wait to see what happens. We have to act.
Lieutenant Bill Steinmetz with the Technical Operations Section says the team has many high-tech tools to detect crime, from the cameras to license plate readers to social media monitoring.
One officer behind the keyboard can be similar to, or if not better than, 3 officers out on the street.
ShotSpotter is a gunshot detector with microphones listening for gunshots in certain parts of the city. That was the recording of shots fired during a road rage incident. A specialist in the Fusion Center quickly turning cameras to track this car and follow the woman who got out.
And she takes the firearm right there and places it behind the pole. So in a situation like this, not only would officers not know of the ditching of that firearm and the evidence, but that firearm could wind up in the hands of somebody. It could be a small child. It could.
So a good example of predictive programming in a movie that's referencing to this. If you've seen Batman, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight, the one with the Joker, Batman he utilizes this kind of connection of everyone's cell phones to create a complete grid of everything, you know, using sonar, radio frequencies or whatever from all the cell phones in Gotham City. They're able to create a complete sonar map of the entire city. This technology is much more sophisticated than that.
Could be a passerby, it could be anybody.
She's arrested thanks to officers watching from the Fusion Center.
Oh, I see it. It's coming.
As Fox 5 was in the Fusion Center, we saw officers work in real time, tracking down a violent suspect in a stolen white Tesla.
It was in our Summerlin Area Command, and when they jumped on that call in that stolen vehicle, it turned out that they found that the female that was driving the vehicle was dragged out of the vehicle, was carjacked, had her dog inside the vehicle, and the suspect wound up hitting her, running her over with some minor injuries, and took off.
The vehicle drove all around the valley, tracked through the camera network until patrol cars and a box truck blocked the driver's escape path.
You'll see the suspect gets out, cuts across all lanes of traffic, runs from officers.
Okay, he's running into the parking garage. He shed this shirt.
As officers find and arrest him, it's a celebration in the Fusion Center.
Suspect in custody.
With millions of people coming from out of town to Vegas each year, new threats emerge every day. And the Fusion Center, with multiple agencies working together, is set up to detect them.
It makes us really effective in fighting crime and terrorism.
The Fusion Center is more than real-time crime detection. There are also detectives who go out into the field and investigate tips that come in to prevent attacks and crime before it happens. Kim Passoff, Fox 5 News.
Investigating tips, that's basically like the useful idiots of communism who are selling people out to get arrested. So it's creating the surveillance state. It's creating this connection of people's minds. Like, if you don't conform to the mainstream narrative, I'm trying to think of this perfect word to summarize. Like, if you're not like everybody else, if you don't think what everybody else thinks, if you're not one of us, it reminds me of the episode of Fairly Odd Parents, where Timmy wishes that everyone was the same, and so they live in this gray world of gray blobs, and everybody's a gray blob, and everybody's exactly the same. This is something that is going to change the very fibers of life. It is something that is going to eradicate any freedom that we've ever known. This in itself is proof that we do not live in a free country. We live in a terror surveillance state where you are constantly stalked by the all-seeing eye.
News, local, Las Vegas.
Absolutely, they're telling people to call the cops on their neighbors if they see them throwing a party. Useful idiots of the system. Those who work for and created the Fusion Center will end up as my father revealed to me. All right, I'm not sure what that implies. That's awesome. I just wish they put those cameras in places that actually need it. Hey, look at that. This guy likes Fusion Centers. Big Brother and more surveillance and government with no civilian oversight. Rights evaporating right before our eyes. I concur. Fusion Centers, community policing, doxing campaigns, well, all ends up in or comes out of a database that is running on a Motorola-operated database. Oh, really? Community policing, doxing campaigns? You see how everything that people say is a part of gang stalking comes down to Fusion Centers? Here's what I ask of you people. I ask that the term gang stalking evaporates from your vocabulary. It is a trap to use that terminology. It's something that will always be met with rolling of eyes. I want you to replace gang stalkers with Fusion Centers, private security, surveillance state, shadow CIA, shadow government. You are a target of the Fusion Centers, the shadow government, the shadow CIA, things that are all very real, things that I'm proving right now and that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of. Thank you, law enforcement. Yeah, absolutely. Was this technology unavailable in October 2017? Of course not. Good job, police officers. These are probably all Lance Cottrell anonymizer comments. These are all... You got to understand that comment sections are completely filled to the brim with fake accounts, fake people. Just all aspects of the surveillance state. That's a joke. My neighborhood is constantly going off with guns. A woman, KS, breaking into my backyard. I have her on camera breaking into a neighbor's car. I have video of her tugging at the handle, one of my cars. And I have her on video in bright daylight trying to break into my other car. Was told we can't find him 5 minutes after she broke into my yard. And it's Labor Day weekend. We don't have time for it, and we don't need to see the video. File a report. While she's still seen on my camera every day wandering around for more stuff to steal, or for all I know, people she can hurt. My kids are terrified now of every little sound. Way to go, Las Vegas. Way to go. Well, the thing is that this system is in absolutely no way, shape, or form meant to help the people. This is meant to enslave the people, to target and subjugate the people. And as I've documented in my latest video on Lance Cottrell, it's operated by people who hate Christians. It's operated by people who hate Christianity, who hate Christians, and this is ultimately being used to figure out whether or not you are a serious Christian who uses real theology. And if you are, then you will be targeted and harassed by the satanic system. Christians are not allowed to have anything to do with it. Fusion centers, community policing, doxing campaigns. Yep, we've been on that. We've been about that. A whole lot of statists in this comment section. Govern us harder, daddy. Yeah, this has nothing to do with freedom, guys. This country couldn't be any less free at this point. This is Big Brother. This is the surveillance state. In 2003, I had a vision. The Rio casino was attacked by like 10 terrorists that looked Middle Eastern. They all had dark, long, curly hair and dark eyes. They wore fatigues and had AK-47s. They were in front of the Rio hunting people. I noticed the Rio has an American flag on the top of the building. Okay, great. Good thing I read that comment. That's nice that you had a dream. I keep telling people they on surveillance in Clark County, Nevada. Absolutely. I should take her down when she still has a knife. Okay. But used to invade privacy of the average Joe. Absolutely. These programs that I'm going to get into, like Trapwire, they have all Americans' private data. There's no more privacy. Again, this is the surveillance state. They're using this to violate the privacy of every American citizen. They didn't show the neural monitoring. Oh, wow, neural monitoring. They have that as well, huh? That's another thing that you can hear about in gang stalking. Remember, guys, it's like before you get the Sylph scope in first-gen Pokemon games. When you run into the ghosts, it's an unidentified ghost. That's what we know as gang stalking. We have now unveiled the ghost, and we now know that it's fusion centers. It's no longer called gang stalking. It's fusion centers. It's a combination of all services and government, and it's ultimately run and overseen by the shadow CIA, which we're about to get into. This is how people are getting gang stalked. Well, there you go, friends. Listen, this stuff is dangerous. Stay safe because we're all being watched. You see how everybody in the comments just seems to kind of know what's going on here? Y'all be staging crimes. Tried to kill me 4 times. Hey, that rhymed. So how do these agencies miss this? Kids shooting schools when people are calling and telling them, yeah, they have not stopped any school shootings. They have not stopped any terrorist attacks. That's because the purpose of this system is not to stop terrorist attacks. That's not the purpose of the system. They cause auto accidents, fusing lies to target individuals, insulting the only intelligence in this entire city. Funny, 2007 opened, huh? That when I was in Las Vegas getting married, used to walk that footbridge. Okay, I have no idea what that person's saying. Oh, this is real and cool. Yeah, buddy. These people are disgusting. Psalms 10:8, 17:12, Proverbs 1:11, 1:18. And all of the people in the fusion centers will twitch and hiss and hurt anytime the Bible is read. They don't hire Christians. Only people who hate God and who hate Christianity. This is an attack on humanity. It's evil. Are they hiring? Plenty of evil people out there who would love a piece of the pie. Doesn't happen here. Our government has made every move in aiding in the downfall of our city and state. While he is governing our state of Nevada, nothing will improve. Harassing innocent people. Hell gone, be effing serious. OMG, LMAO. Okay. Fusion centers, community policing, doxing campaigns. Yep, this guy's repeating it. Why does it matter if it's running on Motorola database? Well, people say the prison industrial complex has special interest in keeping prisons full. And the doxing fusion center industrial complex has a special interest in getting all information about you, using and selling it, even when the LEO has no reason to ask for it or to make an entry report. I can't see your other comment for some reason, but yes, all this information has to be on a database. I was wondering why you were specifically mentioning that it's Motorola. All right? Now let's see them track Jason Bourne. I pretty much am Jason Bourne at this point. Tesla is almost impossible to steal, elicits a carjacking. Why didn't they catch the Vegas shooter then? They have not caught any shooters. Because he killed himself. Yeah, you're supposed to stop the crime. I mean, ultimately, Paddock had FBI in his family, so. A very good question. Perhaps they're just spending a lot of money and not really doing squat. Oh, they're doing squat. They're spending a lot of money to attack every American citizen. Fusion centers, community policing. Yep, this guy's spamming it. Do your thing, baby. Now these cameras can find police brutality and dirty cops. Perfect. Yeah, but that's not how it works, obviously. Let's continue. I'm really enjoying reading the comments on this topic. A lot of people know what this is, you guys. All right, no comments here. PBS NewsHour. Intelligence fusion centers under scrutiny. Accused of undermining civil rights. What? Let's check it out.
This week marks 2 years since the attack on the U.S. Capitol. Among the intelligence networks that identified the threat of violence that day, so-called fusion centers, state and locally run intelligence hubs created to gather and disseminate information across multiple jurisdictions. But as William Brangham reports, the centers are coming under increased criticism for undermining civil rights.
As rioters overwhelmed police barricades near the Capitol on January 6th, eventually breaking into the building itself, it was clear that law enforcement did not anticipate the scale or the violence of the crowd. But that didn't mean there weren't warnings.
Prior to January 6th, a number of analysts around the country were identifying individuals that were talking about potentially bringing weapons to the U.S. Capitol.
Mike Sena is director of a fusion center in Northern California and president of the National Fusion Center Association.
We held a national call with about 300 participants around the country talking about the threat, talking about what we believed may happen and the potential that of what could happen.
The head of the D.C. Fusion Center later told the January 6th committee that he saw, quote, information suggesting that some very, very violent individuals were organizing to come to D.C. As the nation watched, it was just one of the many warnings that went unheeded that day. Fusion centers were created after the intelligence failures leading up to 9/11, designed to be a national network that could more effectively share information.
So what do we do when intelligence fails, guys? We give intelligence more power. Oh, why did we fail? Because we need more power. So why did you fail for every school shooting since you've gotten more power? Why did you fail for every insurrection attempt since you've gotten more power? Oh, well, it's because we need more power. So they are rewarded with more power every time they fail, until every single last one of our freedoms are gone. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you 1984, the surveillance state. We live in it, and we've been living in it since 9/11.
Information between federal, state, and local law enforcement. Today, there are 80 fusion centers, and they're each run by the state or locality where they operate.
one of the roles that we play is trying to identify threats in advance. And to do that, a lot of it deals with looking on online threats, dealing with tips and leads that are reported. And our job is to triage all that information and try to give that to those folks in law enforcement and public safety so that they can make the best educated decisions that they can.
What January 6th showed to me is that this intelligence network they built was entirely ineffective.
Michael German is a retired FBI special agent who focused on domestic terrorism.
The problem is there's so much collection that it's hard to discern which threats are real and which ones aren't. And particularly when there's so much disinformation and misinformation being pushed through this network of fusion centers. So it just dulls the response that you're constantly hearing this alarm go off.
It's a boy who cried wolf situation.
Exactly.
German is now a fellow at the Brennan Center for Justice and the co-author of a new report titled Ending Fusion Center Abuses. He argues the centers have been ineffective in assisting counterterrorism efforts, they lack effective oversight, and that the broad collection and sharing of intelligence that's not connected to any specific crime has led some fusion centers to abuse civil liberties.
For almost 20 years now, these institutions have improperly collected information about people exercising their First Amendment rights.
For example, in 2020, German says hacked, leaked data revealed that fusion centers in at least Minnesota, Maine, Texas, and California surveilled and then hyped the threat posed by Black Lives Matter protesters. Environmental activists have also been targeted.
A fusion center is this Orwellian black hole.
Lauren Regan represents two local climate groups that are suing.
Fusion Centers represents this Orwellian black hole, and then the narrator proceeds to talk over her. It's like, well, wait a minute. Can we listen to what she's saying? That sounded pretty interesting.
Oregon's Department of Justice, which operates the state's fusion center, alleging they were being surveilled despite not being suspected of committing any crimes.
Oregon, through its fusion center, is spying on lawful political organizations and activists, primarily using digital means merely because they were advocating, in this case, in opposition to the Jordan Cove LNG pipeline.
The Oregon DOJ declined to comment, citing the pending litigation. Reagan says what her clients allege happened to them in Oregon is not an isolated incident, with similar tactics seen during the protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline.
We hope that this case will basically ensure that the government and the state are checked in their overstep of using these types of fusion centers as sort of black holes of spying and intelligence gathering, where the public doesn't get to know what is being done or why.
One of the criticisms that's been leveled against fusion centers is that in looking for illegal activity, sometimes people who are engaging in lawful, constitutionally protected activity like protests have been targeted. What do you make of that?
Well, when you look at the role that fusion centers play in First Amendment protected events, we have multiple standards on the information that we can collect, as well as what is suspicious behavior. Now, when we look at First Amendment protected activities, the role of fusion centers is to protect those events. And when we look back at Charlottesville and the attack that happened there with the vehicle ramming, that for me was a turning point in why fusion centers have to have a stronger role.
Hey, Baked Alaska was there, remember? And he was at all the other events that were like this too. The Unite the Right, where they had the tiki torches. Oh, he was at the January 6th insurrection too. Wow, Baked Alaska sure was at every single one of these events. And it seems like the fusion centers failed to stop every single one of these events. Interesting.
And trying to identify threats before they happen. People who may be planning to go to an event with weapons, people who may be planning on doing violence or doing some criminal acts, when people are trying to express their freedom of speech or their other protected rights. Our role is to protect those people, their physical safety, but it's also to protect privacy, civil rights, and civil liberties.
To ensure that balance is met, the Brennan Center's Michael German argues independent federal.
And just one last reminder, all of those people that Baked Alaska let into the building, well, they're getting 10 to 15 years hard time. Baked Alaska walked. Scot-free. No time for Baked Alaska.
Oversight is needed as a watchdog on fusion centers.
When they were created, I worried that the federal government was promoting them as a way to keep their hands clean. Let the state and locals run these centers. That way, when they get in trouble, we'll say, not us.
Now that is very important. That's a detail I forgot. See, when I was talking about the useful idiots of communism, giving the people with low status all the power, well, what happens when people start to fight back against this power? Well, the FBI and the CIA and the DHS and the big boys in the government, they say, wow, what a horrible atrocity that's being committed by this $30,000 a year local police officer. Even though all that power was given to them by these upper FBI, Department of Homeland Security, you see how it works, guys? They give you the power, and you're lower status, lower education, you're having a great time, buddy. You're having a great time waving this power around. And then the party's over, and then you get busted, and then the FBI talks about the importance of exposing this horrendous crime done by the $40,000 a year local police officer. Are you guys starting to see how it works?
It's a bad apple over there.
Exactly. And what they don't seem to understand is that if you're operating in a network, the network is only as good as its worst actor. And if the worst actor is putting misinformation into the network, all of the information then becomes questionable.
Oh, wow. 60 days. Wow. I mean, didn't he go live a few days ago? Wow. 60 days. 15 years for everybody else.
20 years since 9/11, the January 6th attack showed that the collection of intelligence and acting smartly on it remains an ongoing challenge for law enforcement in the United States. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm William Brangham.
Just a quick reminder that the entire purpose of IP2 is to apologize for this surveillance state. As you can see in the comments from Mr. Benjamin Cranklin, that's the entire purpose of IP2. All of the harassment towards me and my family from there is because I'm speaking out against the totalitarian surveillance state. This is what IP2 is all about, guys. If you're with IP2, you're with the totalitarian surveillance state. Simple as that. Okay. So, we've established what fusion centers are. We've established that a lot of the people working fusion centers are lower pay grade, just your local police officers and whatnot. Now, I also, in the title of this podcast, have talked about the shadow CIA. What's that? Is that a word that I've simply made up? Have I made up this term? Is there any sort of backing in any articles or anything that can back up this term, shadow CIA? Let's find out. Fair use here. This is a commercial from Abraxas Corp. This came out a long time ago. Check this out. Well, that wasn't creepy at all.
In an increasingly interconnected world, the exchange of commerce, culture, and ideas is critical to humanity's development. The world's population centers are vital to this activity. International terrorism has an easy time operating against free societies. Great distances and international borders are no longer impediments to today's terrorists. In the U.S., we have a great deal to protect. The question now is, how do we prevent terrorists attacking us, yet maintain our freedoms and respect for civil liberties? Terrorists can be detected before they strike. Did you see them?
I don't see any terrorists, I just see American citizens.
Did you see them that time? Trapwire did. Trapwire sees what you can't. The terrorist.
And the capital A, of course, is for Abraxas. Hey, one of our buddies worked at Abraxas, Lance Cottrell. I got a picture of him disguised as a mailman in a private gated community, but let's not go down that road just yet.
Before the attack.
2005. So this is long time ago. I can't believe this manipulation. Watchdogs. Not a lot of comments here, but I think people see the gist of what's going on. Okay. Now I'm going to have to be smart here, guys. I put these articles in order to make my point. I'm going to have to do some good reading here to make sure that we get this just right. So for this article, I'm going to read just about the whole thing. And then I have a couple of strategically picked spots in the following articles. These are all articles I stumbled upon yesterday. Quite frankly, I should have stumbled across them a long time ago, but that's not neither here or there. We found them now. Let's get to it. Activist post, February 14th, 2017. Trump replaces Flynn with boss of super secret surveillance contractor. Mike Flynn is out. He resigned as Trump's advisor this evening after a chorus of calls for him to step down for an alleged relationship with the Russians. This fits the narrative used by Democrats since the election, and if you look up Moby CIA, you can see that the CIA was attempting to get Moby to talk about Trump's Russian collusion. Now, anytime something hits the mainstream news, doesn't it seem like there's kind of an ulterior motive? Well, maybe the entire purpose of this Russian collusion narrative was to give Trump an excuse to get this new national security advisor put into power. But who is this national security advisor who replaced Mike Flynn? Let's find out. Putin and the Russians influenced the vote somehow, although nobody can tell us exactly how. Trump and his supporters are in league with them, according to the narrative. Flynn will be replaced by retired General Keith Kellogg. Kellogg has an interesting history. In addition to his disastrous mismanagement of the Coalition Provisional Authority in Iraq, Kellogg was president of Abraxas, a wholly owned subsidiary of Cubic Corporation. Cubic provides diversified systems and services to the transportation and defense markets worldwide, according to MarketWatch. I just want to thank Lance Cottrell for being in my neighborhood undercover because, well, we wouldn't have figured any of this out. So I guess you could say we all owe it to him for figuring this out. Let's give it up for Lance Cottrell and Intrepid Corp. Don't forget Nathaniel Fari's gold Range Rover. Hey, thank you so much, guys, for allowing me to expose the shadow CIA like this. I really appreciate it. You guys probably got fired. In 2006, the LA Times reported on Abraxas. In the burgeoning field of intelligence contractors, an especially aggressive upstart is Abraxas Corp, a privately held company that has assembled a deep roster of CIA veterans to handle a wide range of clandestine assignments, including secret work for an elite team of overseas case officers. The company was founded by a group of former high-ranking agency employees, led by Richard Hollis Helms, a longtime overseas officer in the Middle East and one-time head of the CIA's European division, and Richard Calder, who was the agency's deputy director for administration. Abraxas is right down the street from the CIA. The company occupies an unmarked third-floor office suite in McLean, VA. Is that Virginia? Yeah. 2 miles from CIA headquarters. It has mainly specialized in providing veteran operatives and reports officers for positions in overseas stations and at CIA headquarters. Abraxas is responsible for Trapwire, Okay, so that's what we just watched. We just watched the Trapwire commercial, but it's no secret. Abraxas claimed it in the commercial. A tech company that develops a homogeneous predictive software system designed to find patterns indicative of terrorist attacks. The secretive project was discovered through a WikiLeaks disclosure in 2012 after emails were hacked from Stratfor, often described as a shadow version of the CIA. Really? A shadow version of the CIA. Oh, so I'm not making up the term shadow CIA. Okay. Well, I guess it can be documented now that this article from Activist Post in 2017 was one of the many articles, I'm sure, that coined the term shadow CIA. And of course, they're referring to Abraxas Corp as the shadow CIA. Okay, so it's been established that Abraxas Corp is part of the shadow CIA. Interesting. Trapwire uses a series of surveillance cameras around the country and also abroad to detect suspicious behavior. The system is reportedly located in every high-value target in New York City. The system is sold to local law enforcement. From RT. Privacy SOS reports that a website maintained by the U.S. Homeland Security Department's Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, includes Trapwire as a product for sale to law enforcement agencies and first responders. It's there that the background and operational concept of the system are described in detail and direct curious customers to abraxascorp.com for more information. When a link to the URL is clicked, the banner at the top of the developer's homepage described Abraxas as a cubic company. On the FEMA page, the product information is detailed as provided directly by Abraxas applications. Sounds pretty much like a CIA front organization operation. You heard it here, folks. How to disappear off the grid completely. If Kellogg replaces Flynn, we can undoubtedly expect an expansion of the surveillance state and its associated industries. But I thought that Trump was going to drain the swamp. Drain the swamp. In late 2015, Trump said in an interview he tends to err on the side of security, and restoring parts of the Patriot Act that have been amended would be fine. Wow. So I guess Trump wasn't really trying to drain the swamp. I guess he was the swamp. Trump's CIA director, Mike Pompeo, introduced legislation to block the USA Freedom Act in 2015. Wow. The act, enacted on June 2nd, 2015, restored in modified form several provisions of the Patriot Act which had expired. Okay. Well, that's a great way to get this kicked off. So we've established that Abraxas Corp is part of the shadow CIA. We've established that they were run by Cubic, which we'll have to look into. And then we've also established that the president of Abraxas Corp, a.k.a. the shadow CIA, replaced Mike Flynn as the national security advisor to Donald Trump. Oh, okay, so the president of the shadow CIA worked for Donald Trump as the national security advisor. Got it. So Trump took the deep state, he took the shadow CIA, and he made them a part of the official government. So I guess he created the swamp, or I guess he kind of like took the swamp and put it inside of the government. Interesting. Let's keep going. Okay, so let me just make sure I got my stuff straight here. So this is where we're talking about the covers. This must be fusion centers. Okay, the point of this was to connect it to fusion centers. So let's go ahead and start from here. This is publicintelligence.net, unraveling Trapwire. Abraxas Corporation, the company that originally created Trapwire under its subsidiary Abraxas Applications, also has significant ties to the CIA. The company was founded by Richard Hollis Helms in 2001, 2 years after he left the CIA, where he had worked for nearly 30 years. Many of the company's past employees and management have worked for the CIA or other intelligence agencies. In fact, Tim Sharrock notes in his 2008 book, Spies for Hire, that so many employees of the CIA were thought to be going to work for private companies like Abraxas that in 2005, CIA Director Porter Goss had to ask the company to stop recruiting in the CIA cafeteria at Langley. Wow. So Abraxas was recruiting from the CIA cafeteria at Langley. So basically people were being recruited directly out of the CIA to work at Abraxas. Man, that's just so interesting. The Los Angeles Times reported in 2006 that Abraxas had a contract from the CIA for developing front companies and false identities for the agency's non-official cover. Why, you don't say. You know what would be a really great name for one of these front companies? Intrepid Corp. That sounds like a really great name for a CIA front company. Now let's read that one more time. The Los Angeles Times, well, that sounds like real news, reported in 2006 that Abraxas had a contract from the CIA for developing front companies and false identities for the agency's non-official cover program. The company and its work are so secretive that Sharrock reportedly called the company for comment and was told, "Sir, we don't talk to the media." Well, of course not. The CIA has to talk to the media. It makes it look bad when the CIA refuses to talk to the media, but, well, these people aren't CIA. They used to be CIA a couple of weeks ago, but now they're a bunch of private contractors in a private security company, so they're just not accountable to anyone. I mean, when they were a part of the CIA 2 weeks ago, before they got contracted directly out of the Langley cafeteria to work at Abraxas, well, they had to answer to the news because that's what it entails to be a part of our government's programs. But now they're private contractors. They have all the intelligence and training of the CIA, but they're accountable to no one. Until, of course, they started working for Donald Trump. The Stratfor emails on Trapwire detail the extent to which the software system is being utilized around the world, describing deals with clients representing domestic agencies, foreign governments, and multinational corporations. An email from Don Kuykendall, the chairman of Stratfor, in May 2009 describes how Trapwire's clients include Scotland Yard, Number 10, Downing, the White House, and many multinational corporations. The email goes on to say how Stratfor is working to help introduce Trapwire to people at Walmart, Dell, and other Fred cronies. Man, everybody's got their hands in it. Another email from Fred Burton to Kuykendall in July 2011 describes how the Nigerian government is interested in opening a fusion center and may want to deploy Trapwire in the Nigerian presidential palace. What? So remember all that stuff we learned about fusion centers earlier, guys? Well, the programs that they use and the technology that they utilize, well, it comes from none other than our buddies in Abraxas Corp. Wow. A private shadow CIA front that's accountable to nobody is supplying the fusion centers with their programs and technology. Well, I'll just be gosh danged. How about you guys? In another email, Burton brags about Stratfor's role in authoring situation reports that feed into the Trapwire system, saying that this is the Stratfor's #1 way of impressing potential clients in government positions. Do you know how much a Lockheed Martin would pay to have their logo feed into the USSS CP? MI5, RCMP, LAPD, CT, NYPD, CT, Lockheed Martin, well, that's another company I've heard nothing but bad things about. Burton asks, implying that Trapwire is in use by the U.S. Secret Service, the British Security Service, MI5, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, as well as counterterrorism divisions in both the Los Angeles and New York Police Department. Wow, so they created the program that all the intelligence agencies in the world use. So I guess you could say that, like, this is the center of the shadow CIA. Wow. And they were in my very own backyard. Man, I must be really special. In a 2009 thesis from the Naval Postgraduate School, the Los Angeles Joint Regional Intelligence Center, one of more than 70 fusion centers around the country, is listed as utilizing Trapwire. Okay, so we can confirm that fusion centers are utilizing Abraxas's Trapwire. Wow, so the shadow CIA has connections to fusion centers. Unbelievable. The emails also suggest that Trapwire is in use at military bases around the country. A July 2011 email from Burton to others at Stratfor describes how the U.S. Army, Marine Corps, and Pentagon have all begun using Trapwire and are on the system now. Burton described the Navy as the next on the list. Wow. It's almost like all these people are working for Abraxas. All of these government organizations that are accountable to the government, well, they're all getting their technology from a shadow CIA agency that has no accountability to anyone. Well, that's just fascinating. The Information Sharing Environment, Suspicious Activity Reporting Evaluation Environment Report from 2010 describes how the Las Vegas Police Department is providing Trapwire software to at least 14 different hotels and casinos in the area. Several emails make reference to the network running in Las Vegas, and one discusses contacting a security officer at the MGM Grand to discuss the system's practical implementation. But if they had it at the MGM Grand, well, then why couldn't they stop Mike Paddock from committing the biggest shooting that was ever committed on American soil? So what we're seeing is that, well, these programs are objectively useless for countering terrorist attacks and mass shootings. Because the MGM Grand uses it, but they couldn't stop Mike Paddock? You didn't see him bringing all those guns up to his hotel? Wow, so one of the many things we've learned today is that, well, these programs are objectively useless for countering terrorism. Well, then I wonder what they're being used for. According to one particularly unusual email from Burton, Trapwire is reportedly in use to protect the homes of some former presidents of the United States. Oh, okay, well, it works great for private security for the president, but not so great for stopping mass shootings. Burton also describes Trapwire as possibly the most successful invention on the global war on terror since 9/11. But what makes it the most successful if it's yet to stop any shootings or terrorist attacks? That's what I don't seem to understand. It's kind of like DJ Khaled, we the best. Or kind of like how it's like America's the best country in the world. Like people kind of just call things the best without any really evidence or proof to back it up. Well, that's just kind of how this country's been working. Describing his connections with the company's management, he adds, I knew these hacks when they were GS-12s at the CIA. God bless America. Now they have every major high-value target in the continental U.S., the UK, Canada, Vegas, Los Angeles, NYC's clients. Links to nationwide suspicious activity reporting initiative. Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and stop on this article. If you go to my community tabs, I have this article there, publicintelligence.net. Let's move on. I could just go on about this all day. Guys. So, Abraxas was first identified as a CIA contractor by James Bamford, the author of several books about the National Security Agency. In 2004, he reported in the New York Times that Abraxas had hired former head of the CIA Directorate of Intelligence's South Asia Group, Mark Nayak, as a consultant to the CIA group that reviewed pre-9/11 intelligence. So this is timshorrock.com. My Abraxas and Trapwire saga. Recent contracts events. In September 2006, the Los Angeles Times blew the cover on one of the company's most sensitive projects, crafting covers or false identities and front companies for the agency's non-official cover program. Yeah, we were hearing about that earlier. The outsourcing of one of the CIA's most sensitive and dangerous tasks was seen as a startling development for the agency. Offers in the NOC programs such as Valerie Plame, whose official cover until she was outed was as an energy specialist for the fictional law firm Brewster Jennings and Associates. Wow, so they create fake law firms and people with fake titles. Wow, so they create fake companies that are fronts for the CIA. Wow, you don't say. They operate overseas without diplomatic immunity and face possible prosecution and worse if captured by a hostile government. Abraxas had obtained the work, the Times said, after the CIA faced pressure to devise more imaginative cover arrangements that might give operatives closer access to terrorist networks. It's unclear whether Abraxas still holds that contract. Well, maybe they created a fake organization and moved all their people to a different organization, like the CEO of Abraxas, Richard Hollis Helms. Well, where did he go? Oh, he went to Intrepid Corp. Oh, and the chief scientist of Abraxas, Lance Cottrell, followed him there. So I don't know. Maybe they got the contract. But you know, that company got shut down too. So I guess you could say whatever company they moved to from there is probably another fake company that they created. And I mean, maybe that's how it works. So I guess it's safe to say they're creating fake companies on our own soil as well. Well, wow, that's not really good, is it? In February 2008, Abraxas announced that Alan Wade, the former chief information officer of the CIA, would join the Abraxas Advisory Board. Wow, former chief information officer of the CIA. Well, welcome aboard, buddy. Does it feel good to be a private contractor now and not, part of the government? I'll bet it feels pretty good. According to an Abraxas press release, Wade had spent 35 years with the agency and retired to private practice in 2005. Allen's assignments at the CIA involved technical programs in the United States and overseas, principally in the areas of telecommunications and technical security. During the last 15 years of his government career, he held a series of executive positions, including the Director of Communications, Director of Security, and Chief Information Officer. Abraxas said, other members of the Abraxas Advisory Board include Tom Ridge, the former governor of Pennsylvania, and the first Secretary of Homeland Security. Wow, that's just a lot of really big government titles, isn't it? Army General John Gordon, the former... Oh, the list wasn't over. Army General John Gordon, the former Deputy Director of the CIA, and former federal judge Eugene Sullivan. That's like a who's who of the top positions in our government. The former General Counsel to the National Reconnaissance Office. In 2010, Abraxas was sold to San Diego-based Qubit Corp. And one more, guys. So what was the point with this one? Trapwire, so this is thenation.com, private spies in our growing surveillance state. Trapwire certainly merits further attention and investigation, but not because it is so exceptional or unique in and of itself. Trapwire is symptomatic of an alarming transformation we have witnessed over the past 10 years when it comes to Americans' privacy versus government power. In a democracy, we should know nearly everything about the government and its operations. We, after all, pay for them. And the government should know very little about us, unless it has good reason to suspect we are engaged in criminal activity. But what we found out today, my friends, is that the government knows everything about us. They use these fusion centers to collect all data from all American citizens. So this article is saying that the government should know very little about us, but they know everything about us. And furthermore, it's saying that they should be accountable. But when the CIA leaves their CIA job and they all go join a private contracting company that's led by former CIA, well, then they're no longer held accountable. So it says they should have very little information about us. They have all the information about us. They should be held accountable to us, but they're not held accountable, as I've proven today. There's no room for speculation. But the past decade has seen a perilous inversion of this relationship. State secrecy is now the name of the game, from the White House all the way down to local governments, which have been quietly accepting federal funding for a variety of invasive surveillance and identification tools without so much as a basic public conversation on the associated benefits and risks. Most Americans have little idea of the extent to which their everyday ordinary activities are pervasively monitored by government agencies and private spying outfits like Trapwire. Trapwire is the brainchild of Abraxas Applications, a subsidiary of the Abraxas Corporation, founded shortly after September 11th by CIA veteran Richard Hollis Helms. The Abraxas Corporation was the first private intelligence firm to take advantage of the post-9/11 chaos and navel-gazing in the intelligence community. The Congress promises of limitless funds, oh wow, limitless funds you say, to correct what went wrong. As one CIA official told the Washington Post last year, Hollis is brilliant. He realized there was a huge market out there to exploit. He was the first agency guy to figure it all out. As Tim Sharrock writes in his indispensable book, Spies for Hire, Helms became notorious for recruiting new employees in the CIA cafeteria and was asked to please stop by 2008. The company was worth $65 million and had a couple hundred former spooks on the payroll, according to Sharrock. So, as with all the other articles, my friends, this is on my community tabs. So what have we realized? That fusion centers are gathering private information on all American citizens. That fusion centers are being supplied with state-of-the-art surveillance technology by Abraxas Corp, who has been labeled by public news outlets as the Shadow CIA. That the president of the Shadow CIA organization worked directly under Donald Trump, replacing Mike Flynn as the National Security Advisor. We learned a lot today, friends. I want you to think really hard about this. And anytime anybody on IP2 says anything negative about me, well, you can rest assured that that's the home of Baked Alaska, who was at every single one of these events that supposedly fusion senators are monitoring with their Trapwire technology. But as we've seen today, they failed to stop any insurrections, any mass shootings, or any terrorist attacks. So one can only deduce from that information that they're not using that technology to stop terrorist attacks. Let's go ahead and wrap it up with 10 minutes from Do Christians Have to Submit to a Rotten Government? Mr. Wretched.
What does it mean for the Christian who is commanded to submit to one's government?
The Apostle Paul said, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Whoever resists authority resists what God has appointed." Likewise, Peter said, "Be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme, or to governors sent by him to punish those who do evil and praise those who do good." But this is only when they're godly, right? We don't have to submit to ungodly authority. After all, rulers are to punish evil and praise good, so whenever they aren't following the Bible, we don't have to follow them. No, you still have to obey the government, or you bring judgment on yourself. Daniel said that God removes kings and sets them up, even tyrants. Jesus told Pilate, "You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given you from above." And Pilate was a guy who liked to kill Jews in the temple just to show them he could.
That was a wicked event. Pilate had people killed while they were in the temple offering sacrifices. What did Jesus say? He did not command his hearers to reclaim Israel. Instead, he said, "Unless you repent, you likewise will perish." Why would he just cast off such gruesome news? It is because Jesus is building a different kingdom. Jesus could knock off Pilate. He could knock off Barack Obama, any rotten president that you want to think of, or leader, and take over and rule. But that is not what he is interested in. Sure, he's running the nations. He's in control of every...
Well, as we've seen evidence of today, they have not stopped a single shooting or a single terrorist attack. There's actually no room for speculation. As I've proven today, they have failed to stop any terrorist attacks. They've failed to stop any insurrections or mass shootings. In fact, I'd say it's safe to say that I've proven today that that's not what fusion centers are for. The purpose of fusion centers is to gather intelligence and personal information of every American citizen for the purpose of going to war with the American people. I don't think there's any room left for speculation, sir.
Every king and every queen and every dictator and every he's in control of everything, but he does not seek to simply kick them off of their puny little throne. Instead, he wants people to be saved.
Well, we're just going to take the country back. We're going to have all of you removed from your positions of power, and we're going to take this country back. That's what I'm about. I'm going to go ahead and keep this country. I think you guys can go to a different country. I think Abraxas and all these shadow CIA people, you guys can go to a different country. I'm going to keep living in this one. Thanks.
And go to his throne, ruling not in a territory, but in the heart of his people. That's why Jesus didn't really acknowledge it and give advice about how to engage with Pilate and the Romans so that these bad things can happen. It's because there are more, I know this is harsh, there are more important issues than combating even a rotten government.
Oh, Wikipedia, huh? Well, Wikipedia is not a scholarly source. Have you ever been to university? If you write a paper in like an undergraduate university class, they don't let you cite Wikipedia as a source. So objectively, as according to U.S. education, Wikipedia is not a source. So you can keep crying and bashing your keyboard, dude. All of you guys have been exposed today. This is the most important podcast that I've ever done. Probably one of the most important podcasts that's ever been done. I'm going to spend money to advertise it, and I'm going to push this in everybody's face. Something tells me you guys are going to be in a world of shit someday. All because of Lance Cottrell and Intrepid Corp.
Government is a blessing from God because without it, things would be a whole lot worse. God also uses government to bring about his judgment. We are to obey our rulers because God said so. We pay taxes out of obedience because that's how he made government to run. Now, if that authority tells you to renounce your faith or be silent, follow the apostles' example and keep preaching Christ. It's the will of God that we should submit to earthly authority, putting to silence the talk of foolish people who would otherwise paint us as lawbreakers. The Bible says to pray for our governors, not rebel against them, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way, when we understand the text.
God is not entirely disinterested in government, but he is indeed more interested in something greater. He is interested in gathering together an elect group of people called the church so that he can present those redeemed believers to his Son, the bridegroom, the Lord Jesus Christ, at the culmination of human history, at which time Jesus will take that gift, you and me, return it to the Father that he might be all in all. Get the picture? It's huge, it's magnificent, it's glorious, it's profound, it's otherly, it's higher than anything that is going on in any government capital. Do you ever get involved in politics? Sure. Be a good citizen. Vote. Become a politician if you would like. But even as we do those deeds because we think that we are trying to do as much good for people as possible, we remember there are much bigger, more important issues that the Christian should attend to. Why? Because we're a different kind of people.
You are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. All who are in Christ are a chosen race, a new race taken from all races, born again in the Holy Spirit. It's not that ethnicity or culture or heritage are unimportant, but they are not what unites us to God or to one another. We are one in Jesus Christ. We are his royal priests. No one was meant to worship as an island. We are a holy nation, and together, lifting our voices as one, our song is to proclaim his glory, for he has called us from darkness to his light.
Now, just in case you thought that I said Christians should shun politics, no, I didn't say that. Every Christian, based on their own calling, their own circumstances, their own gifting, can be as involved.
Let the record show that Benjamin Franklin works for the government. Well, the thing is, Benjamin Franklin, is we don't trust people who work for the government. I've shown today that you're a traitor. I've shown today that you're spying on the American people. I've shown today that you're violating the Constitution. After what we've seen today, I don't think anybody here is going to want to listen to anything anybody who works for the government ever says ever again. You're a traitor, and I hope to see the day that you are hung in the public square for everyone to spit on.
Involved or as not involved in government tasks, political duties as they see fit. That is the individual Christian's prerogative. But we should not be forcing other Christians to be as politically active as I am if they don't want to. Why? Because all of us are supposed to be focused even more on a higher kingdom, because we are not mere political activists. We're a royal priesthood.
My statement on that, Susie, is that IP2 is fully admitting that they work for the government, and that any narrative that you ever get about me from IP2 is a government narrative. As I've shown you today, the government is evil. If IP2 works for the government and the government is evil, then it's safe to say that you should never listen to anything IP2 says. IP2 has fully admitted that they work for the government. Therefore, you should never listen to anything that IP2 says. So there you go. IP2 is the government.
Before his calling, we were not a people. We had no people. We were foolish, disobedient, led astray, slaves, all of us, to various passions and pleasures, passing our days in malice and envy, hated by others and hating one another. But when the goodness and loving kindness of our Savior appeared, he saved us, not because of works done by us in righteousness, but according to his own mercy. And as we have been forgiven, so we must forgive one another. Here, among the people of God, there is not black or white, rich or poor, educated or uneducated, native or immigrant, but Christ, who is all and in all, when we understand the text.
Perhaps this image will help just a wee bit. You and I were not once a people. We were scattered. We were in darkness. We were alienated from God and from one another. You and I were on a crash course to meeting God himself, the just judge of all the earth, who is going to judge every single sinner on the planet. It was going to be doomsday for you and me. But God, rich in mercy, sent his Son to die for us while we were yet sinning, rose from the grave, ascended into heaven where he reigns and rules, and he calls us to be his chosen people, a royal priesthood, set apart, holy. Why? So that people will see our response even to atrocities. They'll see that we are different in our demeanor and in our attitude and in our cares and concerns, and say, so what's up with your faith anyway? That's kind of a paraphrase of
I've helped my fellow man by making this podcast today. This is the greatest service I've ever done to humanity, and you're all very welcome.
1 Peter 3:15. That is what we are about. That is what we have been called to. That is what we have been chosen for. Now, with that thought in mind, understanding the lofty position that we have in Christ, watch Fox News. Do your political thing. Do it as much as you choose to do good for as many people as possible, but do it recognizing that there is something bigger at stake than just government. Did you know that Jesus Unmasked now has a Sunday school study guide?
Thank you for being here today, my friends. I highly encourage my buddies here, if you have a way to download this entire podcast, please do. I'm going to download this podcast. I might end up editing something, that comment that I just recently made about people getting hung and spit on. Like, I didn't mean that. Let me just go ahead and clarify. There's a lot of people in government who know not what they do. For it is not flesh and blood, but principalities that we are up against. This is evil, my friends. This kind of totalitarian surveillance state, fusion center, CIA, shadow CIA power is evil. I don't know if it can be stopped. As we've seen from Trump's connections to Abraxas, everything that happened in 2016, all the Pepe memes, all of the alt-right jokes, can't stump the Trump, it was all a big dog and pony, smoke and mirrors, flashing light show to distract you and have you high-five each other while you're becoming neo-Nazis and racists as we sink even deeper into the surveillance state. As these private security entities were integrated within the government. Trump was a gateway for the shadow CIA to enter into our government. I appreciate you, my friends. This is a very important podcast. The most important podcast I've ever done by far. I appreciate you for all your help. I appreciate you guys for all your support as I've gone under a lot of harassment, as my family has undergone a lot of harassment. That's all for today, my friends. God bless you. Have a wonderful night and stay vigilant. I will see you next time.